You are this close to closing the deal, right? You've been under contract already for 30, 45 days, and you're a few days away from closing on the sale of your property. And out of left field, out of surprise, the buyer tells you, I am so sorry, I can no longer close in this transaction. So what do you do? What do you do? If you have any questions about the content of this video, my contact information is right below this video in the description. All right, contact me at any time, and please, before you leave, don't forget, subscribe to my channel. I'd be so grateful. All right, so mind you, 9 times out of 10 of the properties that we get under contract, we close them. All right, on a rare occasion, things happen, things fall apart, where we have to put the property back in the market and find another buyer. Okay, any real estate agent that tells you that they close every single transaction, don't hire them, because they're lying to you. All right, unfortunately, this is part of the business. It seldom happens, but it does. All right, so back to the video, back to the explanation about what do you do? What do you do? Well, here's what happens when we first negotiate an offer with a buyer. We also negotiate a good faith deposit up front, right? And depending on and we typically negotiate 3 to 5% of the sales price to be put up front, what I call skin in the game, in the event the buyer defaults or does not perform as per contract. Okay, so if your house, as an example, is worth $500,000, we're talking anywhere between $15,000 and $25,000, and so forth. Okay, so that is a skin in the game. That is what the buyer stands to lose if they don't perform. So here we are in this situation where the buyer is like, I'm sorry, I can't close. And what I'm going to share with you next is under the assumption that that person at fault here is the buyer, not you, the seller. The person at fault here is the buyer. Okay, so that money that was first put on at the beginning of the negotiations basically belongs to you for damages. Okay, or should belong to you for damages under the assumption that is the buyer's fault not closing the transaction. Okay, now, however, the money doesn't just simply go to you at the end of all of this, and it doesn't work that way. What needs to happen is the following. All right, as soon as the buyer tells us, hey, we can't close, and there's no way to try to solve the situation, I go to you, the seller. Obviously, I send you what's called a release and cancellation of contract, which is basically a document to terminate the contract between you and the buyer, right? You're gonna sign that off, and in the document it states, hey, you know what? That deposit that belongs to the buyer, that money is gonna go to you, the seller, for damages. That's what basically it says. That document then goes to the buyer, and the buyer has 3 options. The first one is that they can sign off the document, right? No arguments. And in essence, by doing that, they're agreeing for all the money to go to you, the seller, and we're done. That's the first option. The second option is that, let's say there's $25,000 on the table, right, at stake here. The buyer may choose to negotiate. The buyer may be like, hey, you know what, Mr. Seller? Instead of the $25,000, are you okay if we only give you $15,000 and let me keep $10,000, and we won't put up a legal fight, and we can go back and forth. They may say 15, 10, 20. We can negotiate how much money the buyer chooses to release to you, the seller. All right. And the last option that the buyer has is under the assumption that if the buyer believes that they're not at fault, or maybe they know they're at fault, but they want to put up a legal fight to see if you, the seller, gives up. All right, because that could happen. All right, then the buyer may choose not to sign on the document. All right, and then obviously attorneys get involved, and then that becomes another mess. And I'm not even gonna get into that because whatever. But yeah, so that is in a nutshell, that is what happens when, in a worst case scenario, wherein a buyer out of left field comes with a surprise of not being able to close the transaction, and a buyer is the one at fault. Okay?